she was really urging me to get on my hands and knees in front of the toilet. Like, okay, and all right. So I get on my hands and knees, and then, I can feel this crescendo, and it's like, oh, wow, okay, things are really happening. And then she calmly goes, okay, so your baby's feet are out. I was like, what?
My baby's what are out?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Kayla Heater, follower of Jesus, wife and mother of 5 children, Christian childbirth educator and doula, and your host of the Surrendered Birth Stories podcast, where we share God-centered birth stories, evidence-based birth education, and our pursuit of surrendering our birth plans to God. Let's get started. Happy day, everyone. The Lord is good. I hope you are having a great week so far, whatever day of the week you are listening to this. Today, as I record this intro, it's actually a Friday, so the Friday before it comes out. And I am super excited because my best friend, Taylor, and I, shout out to Tay-Tay, love you forever. We are having a little girls' weekend this weekend, something that we've never actually done outside of like church functions and organized events. This was just the two of us. God sovereignly gave me a few weeks off call during this season. There's just a few weeks where I'm not on call for any doula client. And my best friend was available for a couple of days, and we are going to get away for 2 days, just the two of us. And I'm so excited. I will miss my husband desperately, and I will miss my children. But I do not get to spend enough time with my friend. And even though we get together once a month for like a 3-hour coffee date, we still never get to most of the things that we planned on talking about. We make jokes like, I feel like I could go on a week-long vacation with her, come back and still have things that we didn't get to talk about. And we literally never stop talking. She's the one friend who I've never, ever, ever had a moment of, of silence where one of us isn't talking about something. It's just easy and fun. We've been friends since college. So we go way back, and I'm super excited for this blessing that the Lord has really just orchestrated and ordained, and I am pumped about it. I am also pumped because I got a new review this week, which is so exciting, and I want to read it for y'all. This is from Rachel Zog, and it says, "A true blessing. This podcast has been a true blessing in my life. I have been struggling from crippling anxiety about pregnancy and childbirth, so I came across this podcast in my effort to fight the fear with my faith. I listened to a few other podcasts and something didn't feel right about them until I listened to this one and realized what it was. They weren't putting faith in the Lord front and center. I love that Kayla and her guests always do that. Now I can't stop listening. I have my AirPods in on all my errands and I'm hooked. I actually think I might be getting excited at the thought of childbirth someday. I'm becoming so much more informed and believing that I can do it. Highly recommend for any woman." I just got goosebumps reading that. Means so much to me that you left that review. And also, it is the heart. It is exactly why I'm doing this. I want people to realize the importance of God in this, in your whole life, but especially in this season of pregnancy and childbirth, and that birth is not something to fear. It is something to get excited about. And I love that you use that language about getting excited about it. I am always excited about giving birth. And that's something, that came later as I was more educated, but that's what I'm trying to do with this podcast. Educate, 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 and encourage, encourage, encourage. So just like she came across this podcast, I want other women to come across this podcast too, so they can have that same experience and feel the same way. And a really easy, simple way that you guys can help make that happen is leaving a review on Apple Podcasts. All you have to do, super easy, scroll down on Apple Podcasts, click write a review, and that's it. That's all she did. She just took a few minutes to write a review and submit it. And when you do that, it then will suggest this podcast to other women on their suggested podcast list, which is how people find it. They can also find it if you just share about it with them too. So if you want to share this podcast with the people that you know, share it on your Instagram, social media, just share it in a text message. If you find out someone's pregnant, just say, hey, this is a great podcast to listen to. Lots of great information and great stories. That's how this gets around. So I'm so thankful for you guys. My husband and I, each week, we do this week in and week out. Our life can look a little crazy sometimes, and often he's up really late on Sunday nights editing this, but it's just our heart. It's a passion that we have and something we feel called to do by the Lord. So I'm excited to continue doing it, and I hope that y'all can help to continue to spread it. Okay, now this week, remember, this is the second part of a 2-part episode that we started last week. So if you have not listened to last week's episode, please go back and listen to the first part of Amanda's story. She has 4 birth stories she's sharing, and she shared the first 2 last week. And they were all, it was like we were going to do natural birth at a birth center, and then we ended up getting severe preeclampsia and got to the hospital and induction and NICU stay, like all this stuff, and then another induction, but a VBAC, but cliffhanger left till this week, home births on the schedule for today's episode. So I can't wait for you to hear it. We've got, you'll see. I don't want to give all the details away, but get excited for part 2 of Amanda's story.
So I interviewed 2 different midwives and landed on the one, and just a great experience care-wise. I'm bringing my 2 kids into her home, and they get to hear the heartbeat, and she gets to hear my birth stories and get to know me. And at that point, COVID had happened and I'm not in the hospital. I don't have to worry about, this was 2021.
Okay.
So, I don't have to worry about, is my husband going to be allowed in the hospital with me or not? Or am I going to have to wear a mask in labor? Those things just weren't swirling around because I wasn't going to go to the hospital. We knew where the closest one was, which is, not far from our home if we needed it. And of course, but it was like, I think it's going to go great. I just, once again, had this piece of like, okay, finally, the thing that you've wanted to do, you get to do now.
Yeah.
And so had great care with her, and I was due on Thanksgiving. So I kept saying the whole time, I was like, I just want to eat Thanksgiving and then go into labor. That's all I want. I just want to eat Thanksgiving meal. And of course, a little bit of the people pleaser. I was like, I'm going to feel so bad if I have to call her from her family on Thanksgiving to come, and she's like, this is literally my job. And I'm like, I know, but I'm going to feel so bad.
They're very used to that.
Yes, totally. So we had Thanksgiving. So Thanksgiving Day, Thursday, I woke up and, which I'll just say, I had a great pregnancy with her. I was taking chiropractic care the whole time. I did experience SPD pain with Felix, my 3 pregnancies. But by my second pregnancy, I had learned some tricks of the trade of do not separate your legs at all costs. And, I was like squeezing my fists in between my knees a lot, and that would relieve. And I was getting adjusted, and my pubic bone was getting adjusted. And
were you wearing a support belt too?
I never got to that point.
Oof. I had to wear, oh gosh, my last 2. If I wasn't wearing that thing, I was in so much more pain, like the SPD pain.
Yeah, it was, and it would be weird. It would be like from week 18 to week 30, it would be insane. And I would think it's going to get so much worse because the baby's going to get heavier. And then weirdly, it would lift. And that happened with both my second and my third and my fourth. They all did that, where it was like second trimester was my most uncomfortable because of the SPD pain, but it really did not carry into third trimester too much.
Wow.
Which I'm grateful for. But sciatica pain too. Oh,
yep, that's a thing. Did you have any more of the nausea like you did with your first?
Overwhelmingly. My first was by far my worst, and I think it's because I was working and I had to be out of the home.
You weren't resting enough.
Yes, yeah. I think Felix, I threw up one time, and then Lucy and I ended up getting the stomach flu, so I don't even count those vomiting counts because that was, I was 8 weeks pregnant. She was 8 months old. I'm nursing, and I'm literally nursing her on one arm and vomiting into a trash can in the other in her nursery. And it was just like, this is miserable. But I'm like, I will provide for my baby.
Yeah.
At all costs. No, and then with my third, great pregnancy. I don't really remember any nausea, sense of smell through the roof. So like don't walk near the kitchen sink, dishwasher. Boo. But I was pretty good. And so I was like, oh, this is great. And I did have really bad sciatica. There were points where I was crawling on all floors to get through my home because it would kick in and I'm like, oh, once again, I was doing chiropractic care. We bought a massage gun and doing all these strengthening exercises, and it did lift by the time I was getting closer to labor. And in preparation for this home birth, which I love that you take a bath every Friday night because
I
I
sure
do
do.
too. I do too. And every Friday night, I pull up birth videos and I would just sit in the bath and like we have like a corner tub. So there's like this great little shelf and I had the iPad and I'm just like, all right, baby. And we didn't know what we were going to have. We had a girl and we had a boy. Well, I find out. So I'm talking to my baby and I'm just like, we're going to do this. And I'm watching every video I can find, the good, the bad, the ugly. I need to see it all because I also felt like a first time mom.
Yeah.
You know, we're asking, how do you go into labor? I have no idea. What is it? How long do you usually carry? I have no idea. What are contractions really going to feel like? Because I know Pitocin contractions and I'm scared for those, but I'm being told they're different. And what is it going to feel like to really feel a baby come out of me? You know, like I felt pressure and a thing slide out of me, but you know, I didn't feel like I had played the game, right?
Right. So it's a totally different type of birth from the first two.
Yeah, and I'm a third-time mom, but I'm like, hi, I'm new at this, you know. And my midwife, of course, is so gracious and wonderful and very supportive and was, you know, they walk you through what to expect and things like that. But yeah, I was in the bath every Friday night and I'm like, we were going to do this. And I was working out because once again, sole focus. I'm like, my job now is a home birth. That is what I'm going to do. So I'm going to pour everything I have into making this home birth a reality. So doing all sorts of pregnancy workouts, you know, gentle ones, and then, yeah, I'm just like harnessing this home birth energy. Like, we're just going to do this. So Thanksgiving Day, I wake up and I'm starting to lose my mucus plug, just like in these long strings, nothing aggressive, but every time I'm wiping. So I, you know, text my midwife, I'm like, gross picture coming, but is this my mucus plug? And she's like, thanks for the warning. Yeah, it is. So she's like, it's going to be anywhere from like 42 to 70, 48 to 72 hours probably before things really kick up. Let me know if it turns into bloody show, but your body's getting there. Like, this is exciting. I was like, okay. So we go to Thanksgiving at a friend's house and I'm having like one major contraction an hour and then nothing. So I'm like, cool. I think I might be like in the labor. So that was Thursday. And I'm like, if I don't have a baby by Saturday, I'll feel like really surprised. And I should preface the night before I woke up at 1 a.m. with contractions. And it was like, whoa, okay. So I do know what a contraction feels like. That was undeniable, a contraction. And so that was comforting. And I laid there for about 20 minutes and then I fell asleep. They dissipated, whatever. So I was like, okay, I had this confidence that I knew what a contraction was because I didn't feel like I knew. So that was Wednesday going into Thursday. Thursday morning, I lose my mucus plug. So then Thursday evening, I had my Thanksgiving meal. It was so great. And I'm like, woo, did it. Awesome.
Now I can have a baby.
Yes. So I went to bed early and once again, 1 a.m., I'm woken up. So technically this would have been Friday. 2 intense contractions and I lay there 30 minutes. They are not going away. So I'm like, okay, been told go to the bath, see if the bath either takes them away or if they stay. So I say to my husband, hey, I'm having contractions, but I'm going to see if they go away. And he like kind of mumbles. So I'm like, okay, he heard me. He did not. So I go into our bathroom, our master bath, and I start a bath. We have this beautiful soaking tub. I get the bath going. I get my music. I'm so excited to have a playlist. We had set twinkle lights in the bathroom, candles, because I finally got to have control of my birth environment. I had been dying, so I had it set. I had big gallon of Labor Aid made in the fridge. So I poured myself a glass of the homemade little Labor Aid and I had made little energy balls. So I got myself a little bowl of those and I'm just in the bath. And I'm drinking and I'm eating and I'm listening to my long-awaited labor playlist that I spent half of my pregnancy cultivating. And I just was so excited, like, okay. And I start timing them. And I went from every 6 minutes to every 4 minutes in an hour. I was like, okay, I'm going to call my midwife. So I call my midwife and I have 2 contractions while I'm on the phone with her. And she's like, great, I'm coming right now. I'm calling my assistant. We'll be there. They live about an hour away. So then I am gently, because it's calm. I'm like, hey, honey, I think I'm in labor. He's dead asleep. So eventually I'm in the bath and I bang my hand against the wall because, the walls we share here and like wake him out from a dead sleep. And he's like, what? And I'm like, babe, Lori's on her way. I'm in labor, and he's like, what? Like, he's just like, had no idea any of this was going on. And so then he kind of leaps into action and we have a to-do list of change the sheets, put the plastic sheet on, all the home birth prep stuff. And I just labored. I got out of the tub after about an hour to take a break and went back in. I was like, I hate this. I thought I was going to be in the water. I hated it. I don't know what changed. I was done there. So we had my birth ball and I mostly labored standing up with like my elbows leaning on my bathroom counter and just squatting.
Mhm.
And I felt so comfortable there and I could just squat deep into each contraction. And then when I was done, I would sit on my birth ball and I'm bouncing and I'm singing and I'm snacking and I'm drinking and I just can't believe it. I'm in labor. Like it just was
Yeah.
this elation. So our kids were going to be waking up at about 7 a.m. And my biggest fear with birth was that I was going to scare them in delivering this baby with the noises coming out of me. I had labored through my son's birth and the noises that came out of me were jarring. So I knew going in, okay, I'm a vocal laborer. I didn't think I would be, but I am. And so I was like, I don't want to. So we had a backup plan of our friend was going to come pick them up if I went into labor while they were awake. So it's 1 a.m., time's moving on, and it's about 5:30 in the morning, and I know my kids are going to get up at 7, and I'm just like, oh, I don't want them to, be scared. And so I text my friend and she's up nursing her baby and she's like, okay, great. I can't wait to come get them. I'll be there by 7. And I just asked my midwife because I can feel like things are kicking up. I'm starting to get uncomfortable. I can't sit on the ball through contractions anymore. So I can feel the baby's moving down. I'm like, will you check me? I just need to know. Like, I feel like I'm getting close. And in my mind, I'm going to be crowning at 7 a.m. when they walk into the bathroom. Like that's my vision.
Yeah.
Like, that's what's going to happen. So I was like, what's this process looking like here? So she texts me and she's quiet. She's like, yeah, things are, yep, good. And I was like, good. Well, okay. And so she leaves.
Good. What's
like,
good?
Weird. Okay. And this whole time she was really hands off in my labor, which in the moment I kind of was annoyed by because I'm like, I'm thinking she's my doula. She's not. And post, I'm really glad because I felt such empowerment that I did it. But I didn't need hands on. Like I just was kind of in control and I felt good. I didn't even need my husband. Like he was sitting right there, but like he wasn't hip squeezing. He wasn't rubbing my back. He just was there and we were chatting. And then I would breathe through these and vocalize. And then next contraction would come. Like it just was very smooth and I was in control and capable. And at about 6, she recommends, hey, let's go in the toilet. I'm like, okay. So we get on the toilet and second contraction, my water breaks. And it felt like a softball or orange or whatever just launched out of my body. And I thought it was my baby. So
instead of the water.
Yes, I leaped off of the toilet so fast because I just thought I rocket shipped my baby into the toilet. And my midwife will still laugh. She's like, it's just such a great story. She loves it so much because like my face was like, and I just got up and then she's like, no, it's just your water. And I was like, oh my goodness, that was insane because you imagine, I didn't have my water break. So I'm thinking movies like, oh, my water broke. Trickle, trickle, trickle. No,
Yeah.
this was a volleyball that shot out of me at one time and it was crazy. So thankfully it was in the toilet, minimal cleanup. And I did about 4 or 5 more contractions on the toilet and it was like, oh, this is go time right here, right now. And she was really urging me to get on my hands and knees in front of the toilet. Like, okay, and all right. So I get on my hands and knees and then, I can feel this crescendo and it's like, oh, wow, okay, things are really happening. And then she calmly goes, okay, so your baby's feet are out. I was like, what?
My baby's what are out?
Yes. So I had been carrying her. We found out I'm having a girl after the fact. I had been carrying her transverse for a lot of my pregnancy. And so the week before labor, I have a midwife that we attend church with, and we had a social, and she was like, I can try to see if I can help you to get baby move, because my midwife was like, hey, I just need an up and down baby. I can't deliver a sideways baby. I just need up and down. So I always knew that was like her she wasn't going to stress about a breech birth. That was never going to be an issue for her, but we can't deliver a transverse baby, right?
Right.
So, this friend of mine, we get the baby to flip. And then I see my midwife like Tuesday of that week. And yep, great. Baby's head down. Awesome. Tuesday, then Thursday's Thanksgiving. Here I am Friday morning. So I hear the baby's feet are out and I just lose it. Because I'm like, you mean to tell me my baby's chicken legs are out and the rest of the giant body still has to come? Here it
I
was.
still have the hard work ahead of me.
I thought, oh, I did it. I survived the ring of fire and I did it. No, skinny little chicken legs came out. Congratulations. So, and then it just was like, I can't believe I'm delivering a breech baby, like just all these thoughts. And within 3 minutes, she would be born. It was very quick. And I do say, I'm like, I lost control those last 3 minutes. My brain went out the window. I was very vocal. I was high pitched. I was panicked. And my, midwife was like, take it down, take it down, take it down. But I just was like, I can't believe this. She was so calm. And of course she, was right there. And we actually have video of it. She's watching the baby turn. She can see the umbilical cord pulsing, like everything's great. At one point, her abdomen down is hanging out of me and I stopped contracting for like too long. So then it was like, okay, we need to. So she's like, my husband's stimulating my nipples and she's pressing on my stomach. And finally, one last contraction and she comes out. Wow. And I look behind me and my midwife is giving her a breath. And in that split second, I question everything. I'm like, oh my gosh, why did I do a home birth? I can't believe I just did this. This is so foolish. Like my baby's life's in danger. She was fine. One quick breath and she was pink and crying. Like it was so fast, but it was just like the first vision of my child behind me on the floor as she's getting a breath from my midwife. And that was like, it just swirled me. And then she cries and I lean back on my knees and scoop her up in between my legs. And I'm sitting there looking at her in my bathroom and I find out she's a girl. And it just was amazing. And I'm just like, I did this. It was just so amazing. And I look back on it and yeah, my midwife was pretty hands off. My husband was hands off. And it was like, I did that thing. Like I did that thing. So labor was 5 hours from start to finish, which was crazy. And no tearing. I haven't torn with any of my children. I'm not sure the explanation on that, but I am grateful for whatever genes I have that have allowed me to miss out on that experience in labor. She was 8 pounds and 15 ounces. She's a big old girl. And we went to the bed.
What was your due date? Or, how far along were you?
I went one day. So I was due Thursday. She came Friday morning at 6 a.m.
40 and 1.
Yep. Nice. So she came at 6:18, I think. And my kids were going to get up at 7. My placenta was delivered before they came. My friend came in while I was still in the bed with the placenta on the bed. And then the kids met Nora, our little girl. And then they went and had a breakfast brunch at my friend's house and played all day. And my husband and my baby and we took a nap in our bed with my blankets. And we had a warm meal. My midwife had all these plans. So we had a warm meal frozen for my husband to heat up when I went into labor. So I had like chicken and rice and broccoli at 8 a.m. and it was amazing. And, they're feeding me and they're giving us space. They go into some other part of our house for like an hour and a half. And finally it's like, hey, do you want to do the newborn check? Should we cut the cord? It's been forever. And sure, yeah. And let's feed you. And, they get me to my bathroom and they help me, with the next phase of postpartum. And it was just so amazing. And then we took the most glorious nap in our bed, the 3 of us. And like my kids didn't come home till about 5. And then we all snuggled in our bed together. And then they went to bed and we just like looked at this human. Like we did this and we did it here in my house, in my bathroom. Like it just was it changed my life. It changed the trajectory of my family's life. And it just gave me the permission to go off the beaten path and not accept the norm and be okay with saying no. That was a big one.
Yeah.
It still is just like, I look at that and I was like, that was the turning point in our life. When I did that, it just opened up a world to me that I didn't know was there.
Yeah.
And postpartum was amazing. She ate and she slept and she gained weight and my milk was overflowing. And it would later turn out the same best friend who I was pregnant with our second, and she had a VBAC. She had a successful VBAC. We were 1 day apart in our third pregnancies together. So I
Oh,
had my daughter, and then the next day she had her daughter. And we would find out she had cancer, and she would have to stop nursing at 10 weeks postpartum. And I started pumping, and I was able to pump and send milk for her baby for 10 months.
wow.
And it I am not an oversupplier. I created an oversupply with Lucy. Felix, I barely had any, and Nora, I didn't have any extra at 10 weeks old. I just was like, I'm far away. She's in Oklahoma and we were in South Carolina, and I was like, I'm far away and I don't know what else to do. And God provided. He
Wow.
provided, and he provided the funds to be able to ship this milk to them, not at their cost and not at our cost. And it was such a beautiful experience to know that my daughter was helping to feed her daughter, and we just had a blessed and beautiful postpartum. Zero hormone issues whatsoever, no postpartum anxiety, no depression. Life was smooth and easy and beautiful, and it just was such a blessing. Oh, so good. It was so, so
Wow.
good. I did the 5, 5, and 5. So we did 5 days in the bed, 5 days on, and 5 days in the living room. My husband had actually lost his job. I
Hmm.
was 30 weeks pregnant, and he lost his job, and it ended up being the biggest blessing because he became a business owner. Runs his own business now, but in that time, no, he didn't have to rush back to work. I had him in our house for 2 weeks straight, managing my 2 kids, feeding me and our baby. It was just like, it was everything. It was so great. It was such a good postpartum period. And our church had done a freezer meal shower for us ahead of time. Because it was like, what do you need? And it was like, we have everything. We've got a boy, we've got a girl, I've got all the baby stuff. A friend of ours was kind of funneling down diapers they were outgrowing. I was like, we don't really need anything, but they did a freezer meal shower. So our freezer was full of food. It was just such a blessing. We had such a great postpartum.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And a freezer meal shower, that's
It's
exactly
genius.
what a mom needs, I'll tell you that.
Yes.
We've had diaper showers in the past, which have been so helpful because we've always had at least 2 kids in diapers at all times. And at one
Same.
point we had 3 for just a little bit.
Oh,
Well, and we still have 2 kids in pull-ups and 1 kid in diapers right now. Only at night though, thankfully, not during the day, just the nighttime pull-up.
yeah.
But those freezer meals, because a lot of, you know, people get meal trains, which is great. And people can bring you
Hmm.
like fresh food and dinners and stuff, which is wonderful. But that, eventually stops or runs out, or
Hmm.
that's not every day. And that is always like the number one thing that you have to,
Totally.
you have to
Especially when
pull
you have
off.
kids and it's
Yes, you
not
have
just you
to
and your
feed them.
husband. Yes.
Yes. So
And yeah, some
freezer
people
meals.
did treats, so we would have chocolate muffins in the freezer if they wanted a treat, and it was just the security in the back of my mind
Yeah.
where it was like, well, if all fails, we've got a meal in the freezer we can pull out and it'll
Yeah.
be good. And so
Yeah.
that was such a huge blessing.
That's great.
Um, and I milked it, kept it going for like I would only, the supply started to dwindle. So then I would only take one out once a week so that at least once a week I didn't have to make a meal and I could pull from the freezer
Yeah.
or whatever,
That's smart. Well, ease your way
Yeah.
back into
Yeah,
cooking and
exactly.
everything. Do
Yes.
you feel like your blissful postpartum had anything to do with how your birth went?
Oh, 1,000%. 1,000%. I wasn't having to process out IV fluids, any
Hmm.
medicine whatsoever. Um, and then I also think perspective. I think perspective is one of the biggest blessings you get in motherhood. And at that point, my daughter was 3.5 and my son was 2.5. And although he was a horrible sleeper and eater, guess what? He sleeps through the night and he eats. And it was like, I could look back and be like, there comes a point where he figured it out and he sleeps through the night and I don't worry. And even if this period is hard and this baby is hard, they turn into a human who isn't so hard. And when I was in it with the postpartum with my son, I was just like, is this my life now? Like, my life is over. It's never not going to be this way again, where I'm dealing, like where it's like, I had the perspective to be like, even if it's hard, we will walk through it. And at some point, even if it's 15 months from now, things will level out.
Mm-hmm.
So there wasn't this high anxious worry. And then, yeah, I just was home and hydrated and nourished and gave myself permission to not do anything but hold this baby, which I definitely robbed myself with my first two. And once again, perspective. I look back and I'm like, they're only tiny for such a short period of time, even though it feels long in the moment. So it just was, yeah, giving myself the permission to just be with my baby. And my messy living room was not a commentary on my worth as a mother or a human. That was a really big shackle for me to let go.
Mm.
So I think it was all those things, but 100% my healing just went so much better because I was home. I didn't leave my house for weeks.
Yeah.
Like the first time we put her in the car seat, it was like, whoa, this is crazy because she didn't need to be. And she's just there in our room, in our bed, on my body. It just was all the things. And she started out bigger. She also didn't have to process out Pitocin and I mean the epidural. Like it just breaks my heart.
Yeah.
But
She didn't have anything in her system to get rid of.
yeah, she didn't have to. So she just came out and there was her mom and we went.
Mm.
So it was beautiful. And I did use, I used After Ease, the herbal tincture, and I did a
Mm-hmm.
post delivery hormone tincture and used arnica. So that was my first kind of um, tabling into
Dabbling
homeopathy
into
a little
that.
bit.
Yes.
And yeah, just life was slow and it was good. And slow life is not a commentary on your value versus
Mm-hmm.
fast. It was a big learning thing for me.
That's right.
Um,
Amen. You can say that again. That's a lesson
oh,
I'm like constantly in the tension of
I'm
is
still in
is
there. Yeah, I
that.
have to remind myself. Yeah. But yeah, it's like my husband and I, we got together quick, early, fast. We had a baby quick, early, fast. We moved fast with short notice. We moved again, short, quick, fast.
Mm-hmm.
Just a lot of those. And to slow down and not have plans and actually not leaving my house is my new badge of honor. I have to leave the house more than once or twice a week. I'm like, man, I really dropped the ball here this week. Something went wrong.
I had to leave the house.
Yes, yeah. So, yeah, we just had a great postpartum and she, is beautiful and such a great personality and my kids loved her and it just was like family of 5 just came together and it just was blissful and wonderful and I felt empowered. Like I can't believe I delivered a breech baby at home. It just was awesome. And it once again was this step into breech is not wrong. Breech is a variation of normal. And just because, and I ended up having 2 friends who would end up with breech births and they did cesareans. And it just is like, that is an option. But it doesn't have to mean you have to.
Right.
And it just was so empowering, because after the fact, people are like, oh, did your midwife know? Like panicked. And it was like, yeah, she was cool. So to bring it back to the birth story, she knew I was breech. 30 minutes before I started pushing.
I was
She
going to
put her
say
hand
when
in there
she
to do the
checked
cervical
you,
check and she said it
feet.
was either a heel or an elbow. And either way, she was telling her assistant, we need to be ready to get her into the right positions. Because if it was an elbow, that was going to
Ouch.
not be great. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're all grateful it was heel. And yeah, she said one foot came down and then she kind of stuck her hand up and helped the other leg come down and they came down together and her little chicken legs were hanging out and we went from there.
Yeah. Well, even in a footling breech, that's less common even than like a frank breech where the butt comes
Yes.
out first.
Yep. Which
Yeah.
I imagine would actually kind of be a little more painful because once again, it was like the chicken legs came out and it was like a slow progression out where butt is
Yeah.
still pretty
Kind of like a
sizable.
big head. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we liked having our kids close together. So she was about 2 and it was like, all right, I think we're ready for one more. And in that time, we actually started hosting home births in our home.
Ooh, tell me about that.
As you know, North Carolina is so pro-birth on everything.
Oh, gravy. Yeah.
Yes, that my midwife would have clients. So, because where we live in South Carolina, we're like North Midlands. We're just south of Charlotte. So, like some points from our house, we're only 10 miles from the North Carolina border.
Mm-hmm.
So my midwife had a few clients who were just on the border and she, can't attend their birth in their home, but if they can come over to South Carolina, then she can be their midwife. And she kind of just called us one day and was like, "This is crazy, but would you ever consider hosting a home birth?" And she explained it to me and I was like, "Let me talk to my husband." And we just kind of looked at each other and we're like, I mean, why not? Sure. So we
Yeah.
did. And it was amazing to have this birth in my home. I wasn't even in the room.
Well, yeah.
But we met the family. They came to our house for the 36-week appointment. They saw the house and, supplies. We went over all that stuff with my midwife, of course, there and their midwife. And then she came in the middle of the night and her water broke in my driveway. Fourth time mom herself. And I just was sitting with a cup of coffee in my dark house at 3 a.m. and I can hear her laboring and then I could hear her transition and I heard the baby cry and it lit a fire inside of me because it was like I could feel what was going on just from the sound. And I was like, "Oh my God, she's doing it." And then you hear the cry and it was just like, "Oh my God, a baby has been born in our house." And then they came in and she delivered her baby in our tub and they had the candles and the twinkle lights and they invited me in and she just, tearfully said thank you. And it just was amazing. And it was
Wow.
just like, wow. So that really lit in a fire about birth for
Yeah.
us. And so we had 2 births at our house and it was like, all right, I need a baby. I need to do this again. Like my midwife is there and babies are being born in my house. I need to do this one more time. And my husband is pro baby. He loves the babies. So we got pregnant on the first try again.
You guys are
And
very
we are very
fertily blessed.
we are.
Well, the Lord
And
knows. The Lord knows his plans for you and your fertility. It's amazing.
yeah, unfortunately this pregnancy wouldn't end with a baby, but uh so we found out I was pregnant and my sister-in-law was pregnant at the time with twins. And we
Wow.
called and we were so excited. And we kind of joked that maybe we'd be having twins too. And that's kind of always been the joke with my husband and I is like he's shooting for like triples. He always hopes we're gonna have triplets
Oh,
every pregnancy. Like
goodness.
he literally would have all the babies. And pregnancy's going fine. I'm not really nauseous a little bit. So excited. So excited. And I start spotting at the very end of my 6th week. I've never had that happen before. So I basically start mourning then. On and off, it never ramps up. It's really light pink. So my midwife is telling me, well, it could be some things that don't mean miscarriage and, have faith and rest and hydrate. And on the second day of this up and down, I'm peeing every 15 minutes to wipe just to see, like, I'm just unraveling. I decided to go to the ER and have an ultrasound because I need to know. If it's a miscarriage, I need to know. I need to know. So I go in, I have the ultrasound, and it is silent. The room is silent. And I get off from the bed, and there's blood on the bed, and I'm like, okay. So I get wheeled back to my little curtained room in the ER, and I'm already okay. I'm having a miscarriage, but I can handle it. I know women have miscarriages. Everyone in my family has had a miscarriage at some point. Sister-in-laws, mother-in-law, mother. It's something that happens. This is all mental Amanda talk, no emotion. Like it just happens. This was your turn. It's going to like it happens and we're going to be okay. So I wasn't really emotional about it. And the doctor comes in and says, "Yeah, um, there was a gestational sac, 2 fetal poles at the bottom of your cervix. You're miscarrying." Like, okay. She leaves and I text word for word that to my midwife. And it is my midwife who tells me what 2 fetal poles means and that my body was growing twins.
Wow.
Um, and from there, I unraveled and I really understand like the biblical definition of wailing. I get it. It was really hard, especially because my husband has always wanted twins, always. And I just felt like I had it and I lost it for us. So, I had to go home and tell him because he was at home with our 3, and I told him to put a movie on and a mixing bowl of goldfish on the floor for our kids and to come sit in the van with me. I have to talk to him. And we just cried for a really long time. But then graciously, I came inside, and my biggest fear, knowing I had lost the babies, was that I would pass them and not know it. And I just was afraid for that. And I came inside and I peed and they came right out. There was no blood, just a very perfect sac. That was my baby's. And so we were able to retrieve them and bury them. And so I am grateful for that gracious protection there, because the miscarriage was hard and it was ugly and it was brutal. And I would pass massive clots that were very large, and I could have been mistaken for a baby had I not known what I had passed. So my midwife said the ultrasound probably, because, it was an internal ultrasound, probably opened up my cervix just enough that it allowed them to pass. And so I take that as a gentle protection. And I shut down. But I was having people tell me that, you're most fertile after a miscarriage, and whenever you're ready, you can try again. And I had, at the time, 3 friends who were pregnant with their babies who were conceived directly after a miscarriage. So I was like,
Wow.
okay, so people do that. Okay, I can do this. I bled for 13 days. It was quite long. I had very strong contractions for about 7. And it was just hard. But I had people show up for me in the most amazing ways, because we had already shared the news. We were excited. Nothing bad happens to me when I'm pregnant, right? I get pregnant and I have a baby. That's what my body does. We're very fertile. Like, it just was like, this is what my body does. So we shared the news, and I am grateful we did, because then there didn't have to be this. So I was pregnant and now I'm not. It just was, I can share this news. And one of my best friends, she came the next day. She took the day off of work. She went to Costco. She grocery shopped. She got my kids toys. She brought practical things like instant mashed potatoes and pre-made iced coffee and just all these paper plates, plastic silverware, paper napkins, frozen pizzas, and just like made our life easy. And she just showed up and showed me what it's like to show up for somebody else. And we had a lot of those. So many people show up for us, bringing fresh fruit for my kids, because I'm not going to the grocery store. Like, just really thoughtful things, because this was in July.
Wow.
And so I went out with a friend a couple weeks later, and I had 2 margaritas and decided, we're gonna get over this bump. Let's do it now. And so I got pregnant. I got pregnant right away. So I believe, if I look back at my calendar, it was I bled for 13 days, and then I think we conceived 6 days later.
Wow.
So very little time in between,
Yeah.
recovery-wise, which after the fact, it's that double-edged sword, because I wouldn't have my son had we done it differently. But I don't, and I haven't, to friends who've since lost a baby, I wouldn't recommend it.
And why is that?
You need time. Take at least a cycle and really process it out, cleanse your body. And it was hard. It was hard on my body. This was my hardest pregnancy by far. And I ended up seeking therapy, actually, because I just was so disconnected, and I was grieving. And I had gotten a devotional on miscarriage, and my husband and I were going through, there was a husband companion. We were going through it together. I will say I was the closest in my spiritual life to God, because it was literally all I could hold on to, but I could barely will myself to connect. If it did not involve the absolute bare necessity needs of my family, and that was hard to even meet those needs, for my brain power to engage enough to meet those needs, let alone anything else. And it just was hard. And then fear, so much fear, because then it's well, now I'm pregnant again. And now the reality that bad things happen in pregnancy hit home. I knew it already, but it never hit home. And I always thought, when someone has a miscarriage, oh, they're sad and they miss their baby. It affects every piece of your life, and it hangs there, and it's not just a sadness, it's an everything. It literally upends your world, or it did for me. And so to be pregnant again was I can't even physically, I can't emotionally engage in this. I'm just a host for this parasite right now. That's how I felt. And scared. Scared, if I think about it as anything more than that, because I'm going to lose it. And so I did end up seeking therapy, which I also recommend, because she made me feel okay that this is how I was reacting. And she explained to me that, yes, there's fight or flight, but there is also shut down into the fetal position, and that's okay too. And if there's a tiger in the room, you can fight or flight, or your body might just shut down to protect itself. And that's what your body's doing right now. And it was like, okay, so I'm not a broken human. Okay. And we were able to see the baby at 8 weeks. My midwife had gotten an ultrasound unit at that point, so we were able to see there was a flickering light on this ultrasound, and then we were able to catch it with the Doppler and hear it. And it was like, okay, step one. And then, there's something about a lot of people lose baby at 14 weeks. So I was really holding my breath till I made it past the 14 weeks. I'm taking a natural form of progesterone religiously every day. It is my one job to protect this baby, we're doing that, and I'm just kind of holding my breath. We didn't tell our children because we had told our children about the baby we lost, which it was like, there's no point in telling them it's twins. That's too much pain. And my daughter would bring it up and be like, well, maybe when the baby in your belly decides to start growing again, XYZ. And it just was like, oh, so hard. So we didn't want to tell them right away, also because she'll tell the checkout lady at Aldi that I'm pregnant. And it's like, it's like, we don't need everyone in our circle to know I'm pregnant right now. So I took the opposite approach. It was like, we told everyone the first time. And this time it was like, I shared it with a few people. And unfortunately, just the brain space I was at, it was like, so I'm pregnant. It was not, I'm pregnant. It was, pray for me. I'm pregnant and I'm scared. Yeah. That's what it was. But we made it past the 14 week, and we told our children, and of course they told everyone. And, fourth child, going fast, hard and fast and loose right away. My belly was, but physically it was hard. I had 0 bounce back time. My uterus, had it even gone back from being pregnant the first time, doubtful. And I gained some weight in my miscarriage because everyone was bringing us stuff and it was nice. And so I started the pregnancy at a higher weight than I did just 7 weeks before that. And my motivation was gone, and it just was not a good physical pregnancy for me. Also, I think I had I've already done a home birth. So I'm excited about my home birth, but I'm not pouring everything I have in me into ensuring a successful home birth because I got that. Right. So there was definitely a pride element there for sure. I just didn't need to. I got it. It's fine. Pregnancy wise, otherwise, it was just my body hurt, my joints hurt. I was a little bit swollen. Blood pressure has been great with every pregnancy since. I've had great numbers. That part's been good. So there wasn't any fear about that really. Just living life with 3 active kids and being pregnant that 4th time and feeling fear, and just there was this breath that I knew I wouldn't get until the baby was in my arms. Even when I would feel him move, which once again, we decided not to find out what we were having because we loved the surprise. It was nice. But I just knew there's a part of my body that will not until a baby is in my arms. And then, just fear gets laden into your life in a way it hadn't before. And it's just hard to combat that. Well, what if something's wrong with the baby? And we don't really do a lot of the testings, so there just were things where it's like, well, if there's something wrong with the baby, we won't know till it's born, just fear that I didn't have before that now had a window into my world. And it was hard to combat that. Yeah. But made it to the end. And at 37 weeks, well, even before that, about 30 weeks, Braxton Hicks kicked in pretty good. But they were, occasional and whatever. And 37 weeks, prodromal labor started.
That's not fun.
Every single night for 3 weeks. Every single night. Timeable, strong contractions for an hour or 2 every night. Pretty much right when I would park it on the couch, get the house cleaned up and kids are in bed, and I would take a bath. I was taking a bath every single night. Post-bath, I would get out. Contractions would start. And the first times, I started to track them, and then I was like, this happens every night now. It is what it is. Every single night we went out on a date night, and I'm contracting at the, in our date night. And I'm like, I'm not in labor. I'm contracting, but I'm not in labor. I can tell you that.
Right.
And I had pregnancy insomnia. Oh my God. First time. My other 3 pregnancies, I slept hard like a rock. Never woke up. Sometimes I wouldn't even pee. It was amazing.
Wow.
This one, up every hour. And then I would turn over and then take me a while to fall back asleep. Then I'd sleep for an hour and wake back up, go pee, take me a while to get situated back again. Yeah, it was hard. And then I would have these contractions. Sometimes I would wake up moaning in a contraction. Like it would be 3 o'clock in the morning, and my vocalizing through a contraction would be what wakes me up.
Wow.
And then I'd be like, oh, and then a couple more, and then I'd fall back asleep, and like this was happening. So I'm like, I don't even know when labor is going to happen. Like it's just, so I actually carried the longest with Henry. And at the same time, we were hosting a home birth for a dear friend of mine who was due 2 weeks ahead of me. And they decided last minute she had scheduled inductions with her other 3 babies, and she was pregnant with her fourth. And at 36 weeks, she decided to change her birth plan. And they were living in an RV at the time on land, waiting to build. And she approached me and was like, "So I heard you host home births." And I was like, "I do." And so she got in contact with my midwife, totally changed her care plan. And so they were set to have a home birth at our house 2 weeks ahead of me. Totally going to be fine. She went 2 weeks overdue. So every day she's not having this baby and I'm also having my contractions. I'm like, she needs to have her baby first.
Yeah.
Like I cannot be kicked out of my master bedroom, which I will for her.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I don't want that to happen. So, and then she's having I think she had 3 false labor, and she's a 4th-time mom, never went into labor on her own, So it's like
yeah.
that unknown, you just don't know. You think maybe this is it. It's not. So she had 3 like false starts, false hopes, and she went 2 weeks overdue, and like, oh, bless. Cause I don't know. I don't know if I could do it. 2 weeks is so long. So finally on my due date, she goes into labor and delivers her baby boy at my house. And that was like, hallelujah, literally praise God. I can finally have my baby. And like people are asking me, because like my friends are close and church friends, like, did she have her baby yet? And I'm like, no, which means I can't have my baby yet. Like everyone's
Right.
like wanting to know. And so finally she had her baby and it was great. And she delivered her baby on a Thursday. My midwife did my like 40-week exam on my couch because she's already at my house and it's midnight. Why not? And, everything's looking good. And they left Friday morning. And then Saturday morning, I woke up and we had plans to leave the house that day. And I was 40 and 2. So, of course, plans being
right.
tentative. And I just was like, my body doesn't feel quiet. Nothing's going on. I'm not even contracting. I just don't feel quiet. And I don't know how else to explain it. That's just all it was. So we decided to stay home, and I mostly parked it on the birth ball, and we had the windows open. This was April. And, we're like, all right, let's put my youngest down for a nap. And when she wakes up from a nap, let's go on a walk. I think I want a curb walk. Let's just see what happens. So that happens. She wakes up, we get dressed, and we go on a walk. We've got like local greenways around us, like paved and all that stuff. So we went on the greenway, and I'm curb walking on the curves on the greenway where they have them over these like platforms and stuff. And I am booking it. I'm sweating, and we are going on a vigorous walk. The kids are riding their bikes and their tricycles, and I'm like trailing behind on these curb walking like things by myself. And we come home, we're in the car, no contractions. I'm like, oh, that didn't do anything. So we get home and it's a Saturday night and it's about 5. And like, you know what? We've got leftover pizza in the fridge. Let's warm the pizza up. Let's put a movie on. Let's pizza movie night it up. Let's just do it. So I'm sweaty and I'm going to change my pants and my underwear. And I'm in our bedroom. And as I'm pulling my legs up to put my pants on, a contraction hits out of nowhere. And I am squatting and moaning without even realizing it. Like it was a contraction. And my husband heard me. He's like, "You good?" And I was like, boy, wow, that was different. Different from the prodromal labor, which was intense. But this was like, okay, girlfriend, wow, this is labor 101 here. So I said, wow, whew. If that happens again, maybe we should time them. 3 minutes later, another one comes. And I was like, oh, all right, okay, I think I'm in labor. Let's give it an hour. Maybe we'll call our midwife in like 45 minutes. 4 more contractions later, mid-contraction, I'm like, we need to call the midwife. Like, it was like, it came out of me. It was so fast. And so then in between, my contractions are coming every 3 minutes. That's how they start. Boom. So in that phone call, I call her and she's like, "You in labor?" Because I had texted her earlier in the day. I was like, "I don't know how to explain it. My body's not quiet. Nothing's happening, but just like heads up."
Yeah.
She's like, "Okay." So she's like, "Great, I'm coming." And then I'm on the phone and she's like, "Oh, wow, you're in labor." And I was like, "Yeah." So I get in the bath, I cue the music. We have the windows open because it's so warm and amazing. And it's 5 o'clock in April. The sun is streaming through. It's great. I'm in the tub. It feels wonderful this time. And I'm like, "Oh, I gotta go to the bathroom." So I get on the toilet and I start to push. And I freak out because my midwife is not there. And contractions are coming like every 2 minutes really fast. And I was like, "No, no, 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 this cannot be happening right now." So I like leap off the toilet and get back in the bathtub because I'm like, "No, ma'am, we're not doing this right now." And so my husband is literally calling out the minutes till our midwife gets here. She's only an hour away. This all happens in a 1 hour span. He's like, "She's 22 minutes away. She's 17 minutes away." And I'm like, "Okay." And I'm vocalizing through these contractions and they're intense. And she gets there and I'm like, so relieved. And it would be another hour before my son was born. But, she basically was like, "You can start pushing if you want to, if you feel like you're ready for it." And so I was on my hands and knees in the bathtub and then I don't know if I like that. So then I was kind of on my knees, like over the tub. Didn't love that. It was hard and uncomfortable. So we get on the toilet again and my water breaks on the toilet again. So for this time I knew what it was. So I did not freak out. And then it was like relief, it was like I had a little bit of extra fluid, amniotic fluid this pregnancy. And wow, like it just, the weight of it, you felt it.
Yeah.
So when I stood up, even though my son was in like very deep into my pelvis, it was like, oh, the relief to not be carrying around that much fluid felt great. And I was starting to get tired a little bit because I had been squatting. And she said, "Do you want to lay on the bed and try the bed side lying or something?" And I was like, "Sure." And so I'm side lying and I cannot conceptualize how to push while I'm side lying. And I'm in transition and I don't know it. And I'm crying to them that I'm so sorry. I feel like I'm doing a bad job. And they're like, they're holding my legs and they're like, "Baby, you're fine. You're doing it." And I'm like, I feel like I'm letting you guys down. Post, you're like, "Okay, so that was transition. Sure. Yeah. Uh-huh." Um, and so then finally I'm like, "I feel like I need to be on my hands and knees." And they're like, "Great, let's do it." So I'm on our bed on my hands and knees. And I will just say a head down birth after having a breech, it is a whole new world. It was just so intense. I did not know. Fourth time around, finally figure out what everyone else is feeling. It is crazy. That pressure was just unreal. Oh, man. It was a lot.
No, I understand. It feels like a watermelon is sitting down there and you have to push it out.
And it's not shooting out the way you want it to right away. And it was
No.
just, so we did about 12 minutes of that really active pushing where he's literally coming out, he's right there. I'm crowning. And then same thing happens again where he comes out to basically about his eyebrows and my body stops contracting for too long. They're like, "He's right there, babe, push, push." And I'm like, "I don't have a contraction. Nothing's happening." And they're like, "Okay, okay, let's wait, take a breath." And then still, "Are you having a contraction now?" "No." Just like in despair. And so again, they stimulate my stomach and my nipples, and then it just took a lot more work to get him out.
Yeah.
It was a lot, but I was on my hands and knees, and this time I needed all hands on deck. My husband is rubbing in between my shoulders and a cold washcloth on my forehead always, and a cold washcloth, on my lower back and hip squeeze, like all of it. I needed all of it. It was just so different from like my hands off birth before.
Yeah.
But he came out and I just like fell forward on my hands and knees into our pillows and was just like, like just laid down on the bed on my stomach and was just like kind of disassociated. Like they're like, get your baby. Like, "Nah, man, I'm good." Like I apologize after the fact because like I'm like, "Sorry, babe, your mom just abandoned you." Like it was like I could care less. He was out. Thank goodness I did it. That was the worst thing in the world. I never want to do it again. And finally I'm like, okay, roll over. And they, I bring him up to me and it was like, oh, and then I just like the shakes kicked in really hard and fast this go around. And it was a lot. And my midwife was really gracious after the fact. She was like, babe, your labor was 2 hours long from start to finish. It was 2 hours long. She's like, that is a lot for the body to go through and to process. So it's okay that you're not fully here.
Mm-hmm.
You weren't there in that moment because it was just a lot. And, so I hear moms who are like, oh, that sounds great. And I'm like, actually, it wasn't. I've loved my 5-hour labor. I
Yes.
lived it just enough to experience it. It was the perfect sweet spot. 2 hours was terrifying. And the thought of maybe doing it again and it going even lower, like if my last average was 5 and then I went from 5 to 2, am I going to go to 1 hour? Like, yikes, that's so intense. But we found out he was a boy and he was healthy. He was 9 pounds and 5 ounces. So he was my biggest baby. And my kids were around for all of it. So I totally changed my stance from my third to my fourth. I was like, door open policy. My kids came in while I was labor. And the thing they were most excited about is to see how much water was in the bathtub. Because we have a soaking tub. And when they get in there, I let them fill up the water to their belly buttons. Then they're done. So they're like, Lucy, come here. Come see how much water's in the tub. Like they couldn't believe how full the tub was. That was the most exciting part of labor. They were watching a movie and they could care less. And like, I was vocal, very vocal. And I asked them after the fact, I'm like, did you hear Mom? And they're like, yeah, it was kind of hard to hear our movie.
Mom, you were in the way.
Exactly. If you're afraid about traumatizing your child, probably it's going to be fine.
Yeah.
So he came and he, unfortunately, we had quite the nursing journey. He came out with his hand like this up against his jaw. So his jaw was literally at an angle and his lips could not meet. So for the first 3 days, he was fed with an eyedropper because he literally could not latch, period. So thankfully we have friends who are chiropractors and they so lovingly came to our home and adjusted our son multiple times, trying to help his jaw reset. And he, like all my other children, have had tongue ties and lip ties. And we knew that. So I already knew where to go. I knew who to call. And I think at 6 or 7 days postpartum, he was getting that revised and also in hopes to help bring everything together. So we did use a nipple shield with him for about a month and a half, which I did not want to do at all because of how long I was on it with Lucy and how much I hated it. But truly, he could not put his lips together and his jaw to pull milk out of my body. So I hand expressed into a glass, and from a glass I took an eyedropper and dropped into his mouth. And then finally we could get him to latch on the nipple shield, and I'm basically milking for him into the nipple shield and it's kind of falling into his mouth. And we did that for a while. But he's 9 months old now. We got off of it after about a month and a half, and we've had a great nursing journey since then. And it was my home birth again, and I definitely didn't invest as much as I should have into it the second time. I was a little bit lazy and a little bit cocky, I think. And so I just think through every birth, God has shown me that when you think you have it figured out, just buckle up because it's not what you think it is, and you need to depend on Him to get you through because you don't have it figured out. And to accept that and surrender into that was a big theme for my birth.
Absolutely. But I will say, to your credit, I have had one of my 5 has been a precipitous, like your fourth one was, a 2-hour labor.
Oof.
And it is so incredibly intense. And you feel like you can't breathe and your body is ahead of your brain. And, you have to like catch up with it afterwards and everything.
That's such a great way to put it.
Yeah. So
Yes.
all of those things you were saying about like, you were just so relieved that he was out and you didn't even care that he was out, like all of that, like I can totally relate. I understand exactly where you're coming from. And I know you talked about you were prideful and then And we all have that. And I get that. But give yourself a little bit of credit, okay? Because a 2-hour labor, and I totally agree. I don't like 2-hour labors either. Now, would I take it over a 25-hour labor? Probably.
Sure.
Probably I would. But the sweet spot, you're right. I've had 2 4-hour labors, and those were definitely a sweet spot. Those were really good. So we're right on the same page there. Absolutely.
Well, thank you for saying that. Yeah, it's because it sounds so counterintuitive. Like, oh, 2 hours, that's amazing. My one sister-in-law had a 45-minute labor, and she said it was terrifying. And I'm like, I believe it now. I get it now.
She probably felt like she was being run over by a train for 45 minutes.
She sent my brother to go get the towels from their bedroom and pulled her pants down, and a baby was coming out.
Oh my gosh.
Like, it was so fast. And I'm like, so she's like, yeah, technically I delivered him alone because your brother was getting the towels in the master bedroom and I was in the living room.
Oh, poor girl.
I know.
Although I will say not every single fast birth is crazy intense. I have heard some stories where, it's been a really quick birth, but it caught them off guard because it wasn't so intense as well.
Sure.
And the midwife never makes it to those either.
And I was so grateful my midwife was there. And I just felt like I put in the legwork for 3 weeks. I was in low-key inactive labor for 3 weeks. And when labor started, it started in high point active labor. And transition was an hour later and baby was here. That's just how it went. And I also have a lot of compassion now. I've had friends who've had prodromal labor and I'm like, oh, that sounds miserable. No, I get it now.
Mm-hmm.
The mental and the physical. It's so much. Like I just have a greater understanding and compassion for that too.
Oh yeah. So the Lord's really taking you through all these experiences and allowing you to feel those things so that you can, relate to other women and sympathize with them and empathize with them and feel what they've been feeling and learn from it all.
I like to think that too. I have a passion for birth. I'm not sure what my future will hold. I mean, I'm very much in it. My oldest is still 6, 5, 6, 4 and under, but I would love to end up in birth work somehow. So yeah, I'm grateful for these experiences and they haven't been cookie cutter and I'm grateful for it ultimately.
Yeah. But it's good that they haven't been cookie cutter. I mean, everybody knows what to expect with cookie cutter, but when you can be prepared for the unexpected, that's what makes you a great birth worker.
That's the hope, maybe.
Whatever line of birth work you go into. I mean, you're already kind of doing it with
that's
having your
the thing.
home.
So this window, we've had 6 babies born in our house total,
So
2 of my own, 4 of other people's. And I told my midwife, the answer is always yes. If the call comes, my answer is yes.
Aww.
So for now, it's a good way. I've got a list of when I get the call, steps to make sure, and we've got a birth tub and birth sheets and all the stuff. So yeah, for now, that's my finger on the birth world and hopefully maybe one day more.
I have thoroughly enjoyed listening to each and every one of your stories. You're very engaging and very expressive, and I really appreciate that, especially and I can see you, which is great because, we're here Zooming. But for the people who are listening and can't see you, I feel like have an easier time tracking with your story. So,
good.
Well,
I've enjoyed this and I've been binging for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. And you are a great listener and it just flows through each and every podcast you do. I think you're doing a very good work. So,
thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. You can reach me at Surrendered Birth Services on Instagram or email me at contact@surrenderedbirthservices.com. Be sure not to miss an episode by hitting the follow button. Also, we'd love for you to leave a written review of the show so that more people's births and lives can be changed by the love of Jesus and the empowerment of accurate birth education. If you really enjoyed this episode in particular, please take a screenshot of it and post it to your Instagram story, tagging Surrendered Birth Services. If you would like to be a guest on the Surrendered Birth Stories podcast, please click the link in the episode show notes to fill out your interest form. Also, if you're interested in taking my childbirth classes, birth consultations, or having me as your birth doula, please click on the link in the show notes to take you to my website for online and in-person options. Just as a reminder, this show is not giving medical advice, so please continue to see your personal care provider as needs arise. We hope you have a great week, and remember, learn all that you can, make the best plans, and then leave it in God's hands. For the people who are listening and can't see you, I can imagine. Oh, do you hear that?
No.
Okay, good. I have my phone's on Do Not Disturb, but anytime I have a client who I'm on call for, they have like an emergency bypass on my phone where their text will come through no matter what. And so she just texted me. So I'm glad you didn't hear it. It was pretty loud over here.